Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and today we've got a very special guest on who I'm already excited to chat with. His name is Christian Belloso. He is the founder and CEO of TimeCharge. Now, Christian and I share quite a few passions in life, not just entrepreneurship, but also electric cars. Christian is a fellow Tesla owner, and as an owner himself, he's really identified so many problems as far as infrastructure, access to chargers that people all across the country, heck, all across the globe have as part of the EV revolution, which is why 2 years ago, he fell in love with it and spent those years immersing himself into research to make it better. With a customer-centric mindset, Christian was dedicated to delivering exceptional user experiences when charging their cars. His company, TimeCharge, provides electric vehicle fast charging solutions and is the first in the industry to offer franchising opportunities for DC fast charging stations. TimeCharge's main focus is to provide EV drivers with reliable, safe, and stress-free charging experiences. Part of what I love about Christian's story is that he's looking to make a large impact. Right now, he's in the pursuit of $2.5 million in funding to really get things going very quickly in his business to start making an impact. Obviously, this is a tricky industry that not only affects millions of people already, but a lot of what's going to happen in the future relies on this, and Christian is dedicated to being part of the solution, which is why I'm so excited. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Christian Belloso. All right, Christian, I'm pumped that you're here, man. Welcome to the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you very much for the time. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Heck yeah. And obviously, one thing I didn't say in the intro to this episode is that you are an awesome young entrepreneur. You're super early on in your entrepreneurial journey. It's something that listeners love always hearing those stories about. So fill in those gaps, Christian. I know you've got an immigrant story to the U.S. as well, which is deeply related and something that I resonate with in my own entrepreneurial journey. Christian, fill in those gaps for listeners. Who's Christian? How did you get here?
Awesome. No, 100%. I think the best way for me to portray it and just also give you a quick background on me is basically my whole story coming here to the US. Even since I was a little kid, I always had that little spark into solving problems, into how can I find a solution for something that is bugging people's everyday lives. And not necessarily into the EV space from the beginning. I wanted to be a pilot at some point. So I was looking at airplane problems or airport problems, whatever I could make it better for people, I would try to do. That was at 13 years old that I came from Venezuela all the way to Miami, and I'm permanently living here. I love it. You also live in Florida, so it's great to be speaking with another Floridian now. The best way for me to come up into the EV sector is that you may know as a fellow EV owner is that the whole infrastructure is broken from the beginning. Part of that realization is that when I got a car, I see people being frustrated when the charger is not plugged in, when it's not correctly being charged. There's no restroom. You have to go buy a freaking smoothie when you need to use the restroom, right? Those little things that, even though they might not be super important, they actually bug you, and that might keep you from buying another electric car or from just returning it. So that was my goal in the beginning, and I try to always have different solutions. I have different sketch and different solutions to, for example, the laundry system. I was trying to make a laundry company for the universities. Whenever you have time, like a quick app that you can just do all of this without having to call your mom and stuff like that. That didn't work at all. A couple of paths like that, but right now I finally landed into something that I actually love, which is the EV sector, not only with the technology around it, but also with the solution, how you can make people's lives easier with it.
Yeah, I love that overview, Christian. The thing that really stands out to me hearing you talk about that is that obviously for so many of us entrepreneurs, we have that entrepreneurial spirit within us. And I think for you and I, for example, as obviously, so I was born in the US. I'm a first generation American. You were born outside of the US. But I think that coming to the US for our families represents opportunity, represents us taking charge of our stories, of our journeys. And what shows up in your story is that entrepreneurship entrepreneurial spirit, it's there. It's inside your bones. It's inside your DNA. You always want to be a problem solver. So when you list these problems with electric cars, as someone who's had a Tesla for years now, it's something I can relate to, especially when you're in the renting world. A lot of apartment complexes don't have any accessible chargers. So you're right. You're at the mercy of these public chargers, which, gosh, looking back in LA, there were so many lines. It was a frustration of mine as well as so many others. But you looked at this and you didn't say, yeah, that kind of sucks. You looked at it and said, I want to be part of the solution. It's a big problem to tackle, Christian. What made you say, you know what, this is a company I'm going to start, and I'm going to, as big as this project is, I'm going to commit to it?
Yeah, I think, as you were saying, there's a big gap to be filled in the industry. I noticed it, and part of me always looking for things to solve. I didn't understand if necessarily this was my path for life, or if I actually wanted to dedicate a big chunk of it just for EV charging. But then I understood the big end goal and how it's just, if you look at the big picture of it, you can basically smooth the transition to the next generation of transportation. And being part of that transition is extremely vital for me. Being part of history, basically, when there was only horses instead of cars, I see it the same way as of right now, from gas cars to electric vehicles. That's something that I want to be part of. Is something that is way bigger than me or just the company itself. It's something that you're helping the world just transition to something better, more efficient, and at some point is going to be a cleaner planet just because of the efforts that we're making right now. And I understood that, and I wanted to make it a reality. I understood the big task right from the beginning. I understood it right from the beginning. It was very, very hard. I'm not going to lie to you. Even part of our pitch, when we were pitching to investors or to customers, whatever, we always say we understand this is an incredibly difficult task. And sometimes you can say, or you can argue, that it is too early for such a solution. And they're not entirely wrong. This is indeed a problem solving skills you need to have it at 1,000%. But we're ready to do it. We've been doing our go-to-market strategies from years now. We're doing incredible research. So I'm very, very happy to just be part of what I hope it could be history.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, and obviously the significance of the work that you're doing, and obviously that's a driving force for you. But you also mentioned pitching both investors and potential customers, and one thing that I've always loved about the entrepreneurial story is any and every time you do a pitch, that pitch evolves, that pitch changes because you get better, because your mission becomes clearer, because you get even more competent. You talk about doing so much research. Obviously, you are better now than you were 2 years ago. Talk to us about TimeCharge as a company. What was the initial pitch? What is the pitch right now? And where do you see, like, what is your longer term vision of being part of something that's so big and impactful in this country and heck, in the whole world?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because I think the many founders in the beginning, they just think that they're going to have a yes right from the beginning. And the first time they go and pitch an investor, they're going to say, oh, this is a great idea, let's do it. Or maybe during the pitching, you understand that maybe this is not worth it. So before even talking to any VCs or wasting anybody's time, I went out and I did all this research prior to that. It's been almost a year and a half or 2 years of just research and making partnerships, strong partnerships with both manufacturing and financial. And does this make sense? Not only at 100% expectation in the financial part, but also at 50%. Does that make sense? Can we be a viable business at that part? You find yourself doing stuff that you thought you were not going to do at any point. You're the marketing guy, then you're also the financials guy. You can be many things in your day. Right now I'm doing this interview, but then after I have a financials interview, and then I have another marketing. So it's like changing roles through your day. That will be the little challenges that you have to overcome. And those are things that, just as you were saying, 2 years and a half ago or 3 years ago, I wouldn't be prepared for. So you keep growing as either you get no's or either you get yeses, whatever. You have to see yourself growing. Otherwise, your business is not going up, and it's not being an actual sustainable business at some point. But in the long term of TimeCharge itself, we see it as a company that can We want to facilitate the car manufacturers out there to sell more EVs, because the end goal for all of us, it should be the same goal, is to put the word out there to make it a good infrastructure so people can actually transition. The current networks out there are not prepared for it. And cars are just being manufactured, a lot of them, thousands of them on a quarterly basis, but that's not keeping up with the network. So that's the main problem right there. You're creating by trying to create a solution, you're actually creating another big problem. And if you don't solve that problem, then your initial solution is just going to go to waste. That's the same thing that happened with hydrogen cars. They started developing all these cars. It was a new technology, and the infrastructure was just not logical and didn't make sense at all to create that. It was too expensive. The way and the technology, it was too hard. And we don't want that to happen with EV. That's why we're making these efforts in the long-term vision into making a better technology and make a better experience, something that has been done for decades in the gas station industry, but grabbing that and putting it into the EV sector.
Yeah, Christian, honestly, you remind me of the Albert Einstein quote where Einstein once said that if you want to impress somebody, make it complicated. If you want to help somebody, make it simple. And the way that you talk about this space, I will be very transparent with you and with listeners, is that obviously when we research to invite guests on the show, we see a lot of different businesses. And a lot of them, particularly in your space, in the EV space, they make things very complicated. They talk about kilowatt hours. They talk about allocation percentages, all these other things. But when I hear you talk about this, I can hear through your message is that you are also talking as a consumer. I think that that's one of your strong points, is that you feel the pain. You're solving your own pain through all of this. I'm super curious because you mentioned so many different pain points. Where does TimeCharge fit in? Are we talking a logistics company? Are we talking a technology company? Are we talking infrastructural projects, access to resources? Where do you see TimeCharge as part of this big solution? Because all these areas are problems.
Yes, 100%. I think that's a very important point, because we are customer centric right from the beginning. We try to, many businesses, what they think is, I have this idea, this is going to work, let's put it out in the market. We did it the complete opposite way. We went to the market, to the public, and we asked questions. We ran polls, we went to expos, we asked people, not even selling anything, just asking, what do you think about the current networks? What sucks? What doesn't suck? What would you like to see more? What is this company doing that this one is not doing? And just grabbing all the solutions from many companies and putting into one full end solution. We're doing all the way from the software to the hardware. As of right now, we're not developing the actual chargers themselves. We're acquiring from a great partnership, manufacturing partnership that we have. But we'll look at some point in the long term, actually creating that technology for a better future in the technology and advancing. We just want to put the product out there since we're very early in the process. But it's just trying to make it simple. The full solution of TimeCharge is all based on the experience. The customer doesn't care about the little details. When you go, even if you have a gas car, you don't care about many of the things. You just go, you pump gas, you click the cheapest one, and you leave. You don't need to care for all this stuff. That's my job to do. That's the EV network company jobs to do. No one else's. Most people don't understand what a kilowatt is. Most people don't understand what's the rate and all of this different charts that you see. That's not necessarily the case for if you want to go into a mass market. If you want to go into a mass market, you have to make it as simple as possible for everyone. Otherwise, it's going to be super complicated. No one understands the message, and that's why we're trying to make it about the experience. So we do the whole full solution, all the way from software to hardware. We're also managing all the servicing of the stations. We want to do the full end solution for everyone.
Yeah, Christian, the one thing that really stands out to me in the way that you talk business strategy is you can't help, you said it a few times already, is that those partnerships and the message that I hear behind your approach of partnerships is, you said it outright a little earlier in our conversation. You said everybody has the same goal here. And for you, that's why partnerships are a natural way to achieve that goal, is that there are already people manufacturing the charging stations. There are already people who are doing the electricity, all that work that powers everything that happens behind it. And so you're really bridging that gap. To me, that is one of the biggest things that separates early entrepreneurs who make make it from those who don't, is those who understand partnerships. Talk to us about those partnerships, because I know a lot of people lack that confidence, especially early on in their entrepreneurial career, to approach these people, these businesses, and say, hey, this is what I'm up to. You already have these things in place. Let's make a situation where everybody wins. Talk to us about those partnerships and what your approach is to establish those.
My thought process behind it was actually many people were arguing I should get a co-founder or have a team of unpaid people that in respective places, right? Instead of just doing it by myself. And I would advise a lot of people to just have a co-founder because you have to explore your strong suits for sure. But in my case, I said instead of just getting one or two people with entry level or mid level capabilities, let me go ahead and approach these companies that have 15, 20 years doing this, and they've been going through this entire path that we can basically look at the errors, look at the problems, the roadblocks that they went through, and we can save so much time and money by doing that and using them as a reference and having advisors, partnerships on all ends. It's the best thing that we can do. We don't have to worry about from the beginning, and that's something that a lot of businesses, when they find themselves in a very stressing situation, is because of that, because they don't know necessarily what's the path that is to take right now, why this is not working, why is my solution not being out there, what happened to this marketing. So when all these companies have the experience through other companies or through themselves for years now, we can just use that experience and implement it into TimeCharge. I was not scared to just ask anyone else. In the beginning is going to be hard because you need to be, of course, you're not legit, right? You need to be somewhat credible to approach these companies. So I was trying to make this partnership for a long time, and it's something very important that you need to do if you want to create a business, for sure.
Yeah, you talk about that feeling of being legit. It's something that we all face and struggle with at the very beginning of any entrepreneurial journey, at the beginning of any new business. And I love the fact that you powered through that. And you said, I wasn't afraid to just talk to anybody about it. And Christian, I want to call one thing out for listeners right there, is that how you talk about we all face these periods of uncertainty. And I think that what you're really illustrating for us is that too many newer entrepreneurs, because they don't feel legit, they try to come up with the answers themselves, but we don't have experience to come up with those answers. So you're just relying on people who have that experience and can accelerate your success so that you can skip a lot of the failures and obstacles that they experience. So I really love that approach. Talk to us about some of those partnership approaches, because obviously from a strategic perspective, there's a lot of things that you can ask for as an entrepreneur. You can ask for advice. You can ask for access to people. You can ask for connections. You can ask for strategic partnerships and actually formal connections that you can leverage there business-wise. What are some of these partnerships that you've already established? How did you even go about asking them? What's the structure of them? I'd love to hear some of those backstories.
Well, I wish there was a script that I could share, but I think you have to make it personal too. People feel that, right? People will feel if you're just reading out of a script, if you're not being authentic. You have to care about your business. If you do care about your business, if you dream about it, if you cannot stop thinking about it, you have that script in mind. You don't have to do anything else. It's something that if it's a viable business, it will sell by itself. That's why sometimes that research is so important. And you have to understand what you're talking about. People will sense that too. Even though right now in this interview, I'm not talking about kilowatts and uptime and downtime and all of this extra technology, I have to know about all of these things. I have to let them understand that if they ask me a question about it, if I ask them a question, they understand through that question or through that answer is that I know what I'm talking about. So that makes yourself and your company and your brand way more credible and way more legit, as we were saying. I think that the most important part is not being scared to ask help for anyone, and also don't be scared to get a rejection. The worst they can say is no. Of course, in the beginning, what you're scared, you think the idea is the biggest thing ever, and you think they're gonna get your idea and sell it to someone else. But you have to create. That's why you have to create these partnerships to be strong, and you create contracts and this other stuff to protect yourself from it. But if you're working with great people, you're working with great companies, they will do great for you if you find the right ones. I call probably 50 companies per every single sector that we're doing, all the way from marketing to manufacturing. A lot of companies I talked to during the transition, even though we said yes in the beginning, we found another one, better prices, better relationships, better people. At the end of the day, it's just a gut feeling and what you think is better for your business. And I would strongly recommend just following that gut feeling into who's better for your brand.
Ooh, Christian, in 659 episodes, you are the first guest to ever call out the fact that we put so much emphasis and importance on the idea in our businesses, but that is not the thing that ultimately matters. I love the fact that you called that out because you're in it, you're living it. And especially for you, I think it comes with a lot of value hearing it from your perspective because you're actively talking to investors. You're actively seeking outside investment right now. And I would imagine that doing all of that stuff, the work that you've been putting in, you've realized investors don't invest in ideas. Investors invest in things that are going to change the world, in execution, in these partnerships, in the drive of the founder. Talk to us about some of those things beyond the idea. As you're seeking investment, what are those things that you realize, holy cow, this is what makes TimeCharge something that investors want to be a part of? And for any business, this is the stuff that really matters beyond just an idea.
Correct. Yes, I think in the beginning, especially early on in a company, when you don't have an actual MVP, your pre-seed, your angel round, investors don't invest in the idea. You can have many ideas about creating whatever, the new technology for phones or this new leaf blower, whatever. They don't invest necessarily in the idea. They invest in the big picture of you executing that idea. You can think about it in any company. Apple, it was nothing before their first computer, right? But they trust in the people and the founders and how they could make that happen. And when you have traction, when you have something to show, even though it's your knowledge, as I was saying right now, the knowledge that you have in the technology, in the industry, and how you care for your customer, people will notice that. They will pick that. An investor will pick on that, and they will say, this person knows what they're talking about. Maybe even they might pass on your idea because it might not be a fit for them. They know that you know what you're talking about, and they feel that. And maybe they can recommend to someone else because that has happened to me. Some people has passed, and then 2 months later, hey, Christian, I know you love about this space. This person is actually actively investing on it. Here's an intro. That's very important. And execution is always 1,000 times more important than the actual idea. I learned from a mentor a while ago, way before starting TimeCharge. Where I'm a software engineer as well. I graduated from that, and the owner from the software engineer school, he told me I did kind of like a boot camp, and I got in a meeting with him, and he told me the idea is just a 10%, if a 10%. The rest of it is just execution. You have a full-time job. Well, after your full-time job, you have to have your other full-time job in the startup. You want to sleep? Well, it's important that you sleep, but what is more important for you? Getting this funding, getting this problem solved. What do you care for? It's important that you go to this party, or do you have to submit this last payroll or create this term sheet for the next investor? Now, there's all these things that you have to. That's why people invest in you in the beginning. And if you have a team, they invest in your team because they believe on it. And more about the idea, you can always pivot the idea, but you can only be yourself, and you're the person that are executing the idea.
Boom, Christian, really well said. That last takeaway right there. Listeners, make sure you go back, hit the rewind 30 seconds button right now and listen to Christian talk about that. It's so important. What you hear there is the hustle of an entrepreneur, someone who's committed, this is one of my favorite quotes about discipline versus motivation, is that you have to sacrifice what you want now for what you want later. And when you talk about the parties, as someone who started my first business when I was in college, I can't tell you how many college parties I missed. Literally all of them. I was always working on my business, but guess what? In hindsight, I much rather have the business wins and learnings and lessons and people that I met along the way than any individual party. So I love those insights, Christian. And when we talk about partnerships, we obviously talk about that accelerating success. And the other part of your story where I can see that you are serious about accelerating your success is obviously when we talk about funding. Obviously, a lot of people talk about bootstrapping businesses, but Christian, what I love about your story is you're onto something. There's a big gap and that you can be part of the solution there. So you are going after that funding. You want to accelerate your impact in this field. Talk to us about that choice, because it's not a choice that everybody makes. It's a big task. You talked about wearing entrepreneurial hats. Going out and finding funding is its own job in and of itself, beyond all the marketing and everything else you already have to do. Talk to us about that path that you chose and also what the process is like already for you.
Yeah, well, I think that's extremely connected to the previous question about the parties and all this. It doesn't hurt when you love what you're doing and when you trust about the big picture of what you're doing and what you're building. And what do I mean by that is it doesn't hurt to not go to that party. It doesn't hurt to miss that trip or that vacation, because you're doing something that you love. And it's the same way when acquiring investors and when you're receiving a no, even though when they tell you no and you want to quit, because you love it, you cannot stop and you have to keep going. And going out there and seeking investors, personally, many founders have the privilege of knowing people with money or friends and family around, whatever. Personally, I didn't have that experience and I don't have that opportunity. So I had to basically go on Google, look up for accelerator programs, look out for investors on my industry. At first, I didn't even know what the industry was. Is it clean tech? Is it energy? Is it transportation, mobility, sustainability? What is it? And then you understand that, and then you go after the right people. You cannot present your company to a tech company, to a tech investor, sorry. If you go after someone that only invests in Airbnb and Apple and DoorDash, whatever, they might not invest in your hardware sustainable company. That's not their goal. That's not their thesis. So you also have to make a target, and you have to make a funnel of people that you're presenting. Just like you would do with your customers when acquiring them, you have to do the same thing to investors. Keep in mind, selling to investors is the same thing as selling to a regular customer. They have to understand and see the privilege on it. You're selling the company, you're selling yourself to them. And that's the only way that you can do it, just reaching out, getting connections. I didn't have any connections on LinkedIn or anything like that can get me to another investor. But I would highly recommend, if you do have it, explore that option. Don't be scared about it. And then if you don't, you can still make it. I have been getting a lot of no's. I also have some yeses. The way that I like to do it, and I think it's like a very famous quote. It's like you're only you have to count your no's in order to get your yes. For example, if you pitch out to 100 people and 99 say no, you're only one no away to go to a first yes. That's how I see it. So sometimes when I was pitching, I pitched probably during the past 6 months to, I don't know, over 450, 500 people. And let me tell you something, out of that 450, 445 were no's. And that hurts. And that makes you pivot on your business. That makes you go back to the drawing board. Is it still a viable business? Am I right? Is it worth it? And sometimes you're going to have really nice people that they will say, hey, I love it, but this is not me. Great. That's a great response. But sometimes you'll have some people that will go, not necessarily the best business. This is not good. Don't invest and waste your time on it. So you're going to have those responses. You're going to feel bad about those. And you have to embrace the opportunity. And I guess it's also important on both ends. You have to get those no's to also create your character as an entrepreneur and as an early founder. If you don't get those no's, you might not be prepared to many to many opportunities in the future. So I think it's also important to go through that journey.
Yeah, Christian, so many valuable insights that you're sharing with us there. And I so appreciate your transparency and your storytelling when it comes to your own journey, because it's so much food for thought. And it's a big challenge for us is, are we willing to power through hundreds of no's to get to that yes? I always think about Colonel Sanders, the guy who started KFC. I did an episode about this one time. He got over 1,000 no's and kept going. And it was like the 1,049th person he pitched that said, yeah, let's do this. And then obviously KFC is a global brand now. So I love that you've got that hustle inside of you. Christian, as we come towards the end of this interview, I can't help but squeeze in one extra question with you. And that question is, your industry is changing very quickly, like quicker than most people's industries typically do. With that in mind, I'm super curious to hear from you, because I ask this question to a lot of entrepreneurs and I always hear mixed answers about how far out do you plan? What is your vision for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? Obviously, we can't control what's going to happen 10 years from now. I think 2020 proved that we can't always control what's going to happen 6 months from now. Things can change really quickly. With all of that in mind, how far out is your vision? How far out is your strategic plan when you're looking at that roadmap?
It's always important to have a long-term vision with short-term goals. That's how I try to do it. The way that I plan out my vision is to, again, something way bigger than me, something way bigger than the company, which is make it better, make it more reliable, make it stress-free, and make a good experience for the people so they can have a smooth transition. The world can have a smooth transition towards electric vehicles. But during that, you have to set small goals and short-term goals so you can get to that end line and to the finish line. So the way that I always try to do is, okay, let's look at the big picture and break it down. And then we have what's the first goal? Well, getting funding. What's the second goal? Opening a first station. Where's the third one? And you go over like this, and that's how you can project. That's how you can also actually see progress on your business. If your business is not growing, it's most likely dying, and you have to see it that way. And it might be a harsh quote. I think I heard it from like O'Leary, the guy from TimeCharge, from Shark Tank. But it's an actual quote. You always have to keep going. Even us, when we didn't have any funding whatsoever, I had to start making progress. I cannot just sit around and have more meetings and make put TimeCharge on the hands of the investors. I cannot just do that. And also investors would not like that. Can you keep operating and can you keep making progress and gaining momentum without that funding? Well, yes, look at all the progress we have made from 3-4 months ago. That's what people want to do. Even if you don't have any money, can you still grow? And that's something very important for us. And even if we have the money and we have infinite resources, can we still keep growing? And that's a long-term vision. Having TimeCharge being a household name, about you don't even have to think about where you're gonna go charge. You know, there's one at this street, a block from here. If that one doesn't work, there's another one over there. And if it's not TimeCharge, the EV network itself has to be sustainable and has to be not a stressor, but a solution for everyone. And again, going back to the beginning of the interview, it's all about going to the same goal. If I will not just think about TimeCharge on this end, I want the manufacturers to sell more cars. I want the other EV charging companies to make more charging infrastructure. We are all benefiting from it because we're making that transition to the next generation of transportation. If you really look towards that goal, and many of the current companies out there, they don't, but the ones that actually do are the ones that are doing great. It's why those are doing great, because they go into, they look at that long-term vision. They really care about the product, the sustainability aspects, and just creating a new product that no one has ever seen before. And that really lights a spark on me. And it's always, you have to think bigger than yourself all the time. You don't put yourself in front of it. You have to put your company and then the goal of your company always first and foremost.
Yeah, Christian, I love that answer for so many reasons. Most of all is because I can feel that you're onto something big here. And I know that for so many listeners, this is going to be the first time that they hear about Christian Belloso and the first time that they hear about TimeCharge. But for sure, this is not going to be the last. And I know that I'm personally so excited to know you, to follow your journey from here as an EV owner myself. I know that I'm going to benefit from all the work that you're doing now and into the future. And I know that listeners are going to be chomping at the bit to learn more about you, the work that you're doing, how they can connect with TimeCharge, all that good stuff. So drop those links on us, Christian.
I will, 100%. You can always find us in if you just Google us, TimeCharge, TimeChargeNetwork.com. We have all the socials there. We also have our Twitter is TimeChargeNet. Our Instagram is also TimeChargeNet. The handles were taken, so but that's great. I think it's great to be part of this opportunity. I think I got stuck there for.
Yeah, you're back now.
No worries.
Yeah, so absolutely. Christian, I love that, how easy you make it for us. Listeners, you already know the drill. Wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode, scroll right on down. You can find Christian's business website at timechargenetwork.com. We're also linking to all of his socials as well as if you want to connect with Christian on LinkedIn, we're going to include a link to his personal LinkedIn, because we all know, I'm sure you could feel it just like I could in today's episode, is that Christian has the hustle, has the commitment, has the desire to really make an impact, not only in his industry, but in this world. So I'm personally so excited, Christian, and so thankful that you came on. So thank you so much for coming on and joining us today on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.